37 in our 2025 Chronological Bible readings. And we're still in the book of Ezekiel exclusively this week, chapters 24 through 40. I want to do these in 4 sections. The first and the last will be a chapter each. So let's pick up in chapter 24, which is the conclusion of the section on prophecies concerning Judah and Jerusalem. The events of this chapter occur 2 years before the temple is destroyed there in Jerusalem, which occurred in 586 BC. So that would mean this chapter is in 588 BC. After Jerusalem is pictured as a boiling pot full of sin or full of rust, which represents sin, the Lord reminds the people of their coming deliverance by him. Yeah, that's a good thing. But there is some grief to come. And Ezekiel's wife is actually going to die in this chapter. And he's not allowed to publicly mourn for her. Why? This is depicting what it's going to be like in the exile, where there's going to be great grief before the deliverance of God. I know it's unpleasant, but folks, that's the storyline. Then we move on to chapters 25 through 32, talking about the impending judgments of God upon the nations and kingdoms who have been a thorn in the people of God's side. Israel and Judah, they've been problematic to them. These have been the enemies of God, and they've gloated about it. They've not been shy or ashamed about it in the least. Tyre is especially dealt with, and the king of Tyre, these lengthy pronouncements of judgment coming against them. The king of Tyre is even used symbolically to picture Satan there in chapter 28. But take note that these chapters occur in 586 to 587 BC. But then we jump to 570 BC in chapter 29. And chapters 31 and 32 go back to 586 and 585 BC to detail the judgments that are going to come upon Egypt and the Pharaoh, which is the king of Egypt. You just have to slow down and notice those time markers. When he says, in the 11th year, remember, he was exiled in 597 BC, so that's how you do your counts. Chapters 33 through 39 deal primarily with the restoration of the people of God. True and false watchmen are contrasted. Ezekiel is a true watchman. He says what God says to say, even if the people aren't going to want to like it. Also, false prophets and true prophets are contrasted. The Lord is going to bring his people back to the promised land, but it will be when he said it would be. And it will be in the way that he said it would be, not the way that false prophets say. My guess is that chapter 37 is probably the most well referred to chapter, or most likely referred to chapter in Ezekiel. It deals with the vision of the valley of dry bones. You might remember that's where Ezekiel is told to prophesy to them, and we see the bones come together and life is restored, and that is picturing the restoration that God will bring to his covenant people. That's going to happen. Chapters 38 and 39 deal with a previously unknown, or at least unwritten about enemy known as Gog, this prince of a certain area with a coalition army that is quite substantial. And this Gog is going to lead his people to go against the people of God. There is speculation as to when does that happen? Has it happened? Is it going to happen? I'm not even going to touch that right now. There's a lot there. So be reading and trying to comprehend what's going on. Ultimately, God is going to use that enemy to bring his glory about the entire earth. So I'm just going to stop that section right there and then finish up with chapter 40, which is the first chapter in the last major section of the book, dealing with this future heavenly temple, I think. It begins in 572 BC. And you got to keep in mind that Solomon's temple had been burned to the ground in 586 BC. So 14 years have passed since that happened. There is debate as to whether or not this temple in these visions will be an actual structure reconstructed in Jerusalem, or if it's only future. Is it symbolic? And by the way, just because someone says symbolic doesn't mean that we don't take the Bible literally. I do. But a verse that I and others go to is this. Jesus says he's the door by which every man must enter, but he's not figuratively, or he's not literally a door. He's not made of wood. So the Bible does use symbolic language, and I think that's what's happening here. Might there be a rebuilt temple in Jerusalem? Possibly, but I don't know that there has to be. And Ezekiel's going to be laying out details about this future temple, because that one that Solomon had constructed had been burnt to the ground. Now, there will be a rebuilt temple when we get to 536 BC, when the exiles return home, and then later in 520 BC when they pick up the rebuilding of the temple. And during Jesus' lifetime, that temple was standing and still being worked on, but by AD 70, it was destroyed by the Romans. So a lot there, I know. Take the time to read the chapters. It's not a casual read, but don't let that turn you away from it. May it drive you more to say, God, I want to know what you're getting at here. Don't be ready to write any books on it anytime soon, okay? There's a lot of information in Ezekiel, and some of it is still puzzling, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It just, Lord, I'm trying to comprehend this, and it's not always easy to understand. A couple of dynamics to watch for. The enemies of God do not and will not ultimately get away with their treachery. God will judge them. He will one day finally balance all of the books. And that is a warning, and we need to heed that. Do not skip over sections of the Bible, especially sections like these that are a little bit thicker and tougher to understand, especially when they're dealing with an eschatological nature or even an apocalyptic nature. Just be willing to spend more time in them. Be gracious, because there are plenty of opinions, and we always want to rest on the side that God has spoken, His word is true, even when I don't fully comprehend it all. I pray that this will be a beneficial week of spending time with the Lord in His word, and even if you come through going, Lord, I still don't know everything that's going on there, commune with Him. Let Him deal with your heart. Behold Him, respond to Him in right manner. And this is my prayer for you and for myself too. Until next time, God's grace to you as you read His word.